Oh, okay, we're live. All right, what's up, everybody? So today, we're doing something a little fun, a little different. I got myself, Carlos, and Daniel all on the call, and we kind of just wanted to get together and do a little bit of a group chat, talk about a subject that we're all kind of passionate about. In fact, these two guys I know are, I guess, some of the more intriguing folks on this subject matter. I like to talk to them about things that they're kind of getting into and looking at. And basically, what we're going to be talking about is being a truth seeker, right? So people who seek the truth, and Dr. Wilson talks about this kind of on his website and a lot of religious texts and the Bible and all that. They talk about the way, the truth, the life. There's some people call it a frequency that you resonate with. There's something about the truth that resides deep inside of us. And there's certain people out there who seek this truth or whatever. And we just kind of want to go over the topic in a broad sense and kind of what it is and how it is in our lives and just all the rigmarole that surrounds that or whatever, right? So I guess real quick. Well, I know everybody's kind of introduced himself already because you've been on the channel, but we're just gonna jump right into it. So we're gonna start with Daniel. And Daniel, we're gonna start with you, man. So what in your mind is a truth seeker?
Well, in my mind, I can only think about the way I've been. For me personally, seeking the truth, I've always wanted to understand the ins and outs of everything, all the mysteries of life, all the things that other people think would be taboo or they ignore, the reasons why people think the way they think, the reasons why people do the things that they do, human behavior, even things. I'm not necessarily a scientist, but even things. Going that deep into the scientific aspects of why things work the way they work. And, spiritually, I've always been interested in the spiritual and metaphysical, whatever you want to call it, just to know how it works and why it works, and for no real purpose besides just to know. And that's been my understanding of it. That's been my motivation. But then the older I got, and as I'm going further into my journey of truth seeking, I'm understanding that inspiration that I've had to understand and know things about the life and the mysteries of life is to ultimately be able to help others go through difficult times in their life, help others to heal and to become better people and to overcome whatever obstacles that are set in their way, and to just make the world a better place, basically.
Okay. It's a pretty noble cause.
Yeah.
So, Carlos, how about yourself, bud? What is a truth seeker?
What is a truth seeker? I think for me, most of the time, since I was little, I've always been going against the grain for some reason. I noticed that now looking back that I always went against the grain. My parents were fairly, well, not my parents, my dad, it was fairly religious, Catholic. And, they put us through a lot of whatever rituals. I mean, Catholics have a lot of rituals, like you have all these sermons and you go to Catholic school. And I would always, even at that age, I think it was probably, 8 or 9 or 7. I was always like, why am I doing this? Asking the questions like, who is this guy? What is the purpose of this priest? Why am I having to do this or that ritual? And I've always had that something in me that's always questioned the purpose of everything that we're being, I guess, put in front of us as we're little, and I would say entrained pretty much by society. And I would say that a truth seeker is basically somebody that doesn't take everybody else's word for it and tries to figure out for themselves or make up their own minds, take a little bit of time to figure out what exactly is going on in the world, right? I would say in the Matrix, right? So It's like a Neo figuring out that, there's a little something weird going on here that's not right. And you're trying to figure out what that is. But, obviously you're going to hit a bunch of dead ends in over your life, and you're going to backtrack. I've done a lot of that. So I know it's a lifelong process. It's not like you're a truth seeker or you're not. It's more like you'll be in and out of that flow for a while.
Yeah. Well, I guess for myself, if I had to say what is a truth seeker, it's just this deep rooted need to know or want to know what's going on. And like, I guess I've always been kind of a skeptic of sorts. So like, kind of like Carlos was just saying, where like I hear stuff or people tell me to do things or whatever, and they kind of accepted at face value. And I guess I never really felt that way. You know what I mean? I did it for a lot of my life or whatever, but I think always there was just something bubbling up inside of me that kind of made me want to go a little bit deeper and kind of see what the who, what, when, where, and why. You know what I mean? I think I always liked in school, they kind of talked about the scientific method, and it was basically like a series of steps that you would do over and over again to create a reproducible observation. You know what I mean? I kind of like that concept because what it did, it was just like, you know, you have to start with the most fundamental thing. You know what I mean? I even remember, I think it was in like third or fourth grade or something like that. It was this silly thing where it was like, we had to write how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you know, and you had to write the list of steps or whatever, right? And, you know, of course, everybody just assumes you take everything for granted, like put the peanut butter on the bread. And so you just take the jar and you put it on the bread and you're like, okay, now what? You know what I mean? So like, it's just little things like that where like everybody just takes so many things for granted, but I really like to get down to like the nuts and bolts of it all. You know what I mean? The meat and potatoes, as they say. And like, there's something that's fulfilling about that, right? Maybe it's divinely fulfilling of in some way, shape, or form. But I've always kind of had that in me. I guess as of late, especially in the last 3 years or so, it's really kind of coming to the forefront or whatever. And I guess it's becoming a lot easier to do that too, because we have like the internet and YouTube's like a huge thing right now, where that's where I feel like a lot of the truth content is, you know, whereas before, and there's just more people talking about it, it's becoming more commonplace. And so it's just like exciting, you know what I mean? It's exciting time. There's so much information, which can be a bad thing too, because there's a lot of misinfo or disinfo out there too. And so choppy waters, you got to navigate it. And sometimes, you know, you get yolk on your face because you were kind of latching onto something, but then at the same time, it was totally wrong. You kind of have to like, face the music. Okay, I guess I was wrong about this, whatever, right? But
that was totally wrong.
There's something like
I just wasted 5 years of my life.
Yeah, there's something like you know, that's another thing. Then this is like a deeper discussion. Like, it's okay to be wrong about something. Like, I try to say something like, I don't necessarily latch onto things per se, but I do like to latch onto the truth. So I'm loyal to the truth. So like, if I'm doing something and I think it's the truth and I think it's leading me down a good path, but then for some reason it changes or whatever, well, then it kind of changes or whatever, right? And I have to be able to kind of go with the flow and ebb and weave and bob and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's something that's exciting about that for me. So yeah, so I guess a truth seeker is just somebody who really wants to know, right? And they're relentless about it, right? so anyway, so let's keep rolling on this thing. So the next question, I actually wrote stuff down, is we'll go with Daniel, and we'll start kind of with like, what woke you up? Like, what kind of introduced you to this concept and kind of got you going on this path in the first place?
What woke me up is my entire life since birth, basically.
At inception?
Yeah, growing up was very difficult experience for me. It was a lot of traumatic experiences growing up as a child, from just my household to the types of people that I was around in school. I always was seen as very different. I didn't necessarily think of myself as being different, but growing up, being around multiple different types of people, I was treated a certain way, and people looked at me a certain way, and I just wasn't fully accepted the way that I thought I should. So it always was just peculiar to me, and I never could put my finger on as to why. So what that did was drive me to be more of a introverted and isolated person. And being introverted and isolated, you
question.
You end up,
In what way or kind of were you different from your peers?
Well, I always had different opinions, and I would never just go along with, you know, it's like if everybody believed one thing, even the people that really didn't want to go along with certain things, I would just see them go along with it, and I would be like, that is silly, or that's dumb, that's stupid, and then people would get mad at me for saying that, like they want to fight me, like literally. I mean, I think if people could have killed me, they would have tried.
Isn't that funny? It's kind of like there's this thing where like everybody's doing it, and as soon as you question it, right, it kind of like breaks the programming, right? And
Yeah,
like
they start
in their brain,
glitching.
like all of a sudden it's like does not compute, and they freak out.
Yeah,
At you.
they're like,
They can't
they
internalize
start
it,
glitching.
externalize it, right? So
Yeah, you know, and I've made a lot of people start glitching, and you know, their violent algorithms start to come out, but you know, just little things like that. Um, just basically just differences of opinion, and it's never really anything that I physically did. It's just the way that I thought that was different from people, and this is from elementary school on up. I mean, for as long as I can remember, and I was always conscious of God and religion, growing up in reading the Bible and in Christian church and stuff like that. So I was always very conscious of that, and I always believed in it, and it always made sense to me. But I was the type of person, I tried the best that I could to live according to what I believed. And what was very interesting to me was that a lot of people that I saw, they would do the opposite. They would proclaim to believe something but make no attempt to live it out. And that to me was contradicting, but it didn't make any sense. So when I would speak about it, you know, that's one of the things that would turn people, you know, against me. And so those are the kind of the issues that I had growing up, but led me to being more comfortable in my own company. I'd spent a lot of time alone. You know, I was always very athletic, so I always played sports. So I did have that ability to be a people person and, you know, talk to people and had friends because of sports. But outside of that, you know, I just did a lot of researching and studying. And when YouTube got big, you know, I started living on YouTube, you know, because there's so much information out there. I would read on different websites about all different types of things. And the deeper I went in, the more I wanted to go in and the more I wanted to know. And, you know, that allowed me to start understanding some of the gifts that I have and some of the gifts that God gave me that I can use to better myself and to help better other people. And, you know, that's what got me into a whole lot of different things, the numerology and astrology stuff, and, you know, writing. And, of course, it led me to nutritional balancing. All of the things that were perceived, that people can perceive as negative, what I try to do is turn that into a positive. You know, so one of the things that even drove me into nutritional balancing is because I had a child that was ill, and you know, we put him on a program, and you know, I read Dr. Wilson's articles pretty with veracity, especially in the beginning. You know, the first couple of years, I probably read all of his articles that I thought had any type of that pertained to me in any type of way. And you know, I remember, I really don't read him as much now. I remember everything that I read from him, and it just helps me to connect the dots to all the other things that I researched over the years. And now I do more of just putting everything together and trying to put it out on paper. You know, write books and different things like that, so I can help others with the knowledge that I've accumulated from the many different teachers that I've had. So yeah, that's basically how I woke up. It's just my life experiences.
Existing on Earth.
Huh?
I said existing on Earth is a good start, huh?
Yeah, that's it. Just mainly the negative interactions with human beings that I've had throughout my life is the main catalyst that helped to wake me up.
In that process, is there any particularly big ones or memorable ones? Like a lot of people be like, well, when 9/11 happened, and like they kind of started to poke through holes and all that kind of stuff. You know, everybody's like, whoa, like what's going? You know, anything that kind of resonates for you like that?
No, not really. Not anything outside of my own personal life. Really, everything was, you know, it was 9/11s was happening in my personal life on a daily basis. So I felt so, but the internet really allowed me. It drew me to those types of teachers and people who were seeking after the truth the way that I was.
Any particular person you came across early on in your journey that really kept you rolling?
Oh man, I came across this guy named G. Craig Lewis. He's actually a pastor in Dallas, and he was talking about the the music industry and some of the things that the celebrities do that are pretty evil to attain fame and fortune and things of that nature. So that really opened my eyes up. And then Alex Jones, I watched him for a while, and those are the first two. And also this guy named Scott Johnson. Those are the first three that really woke me up. And then after that, it's just been a pantheon of people that I've listened to and learned from over the years.
Okay. All right, Carlos, how about yourself, man? What woke you up? Gave you the red pill, as they like to say. Speaking of the Matrix.
For me, I think it was like really woke up was when I had started having health issues, more prominent ones. I'd say I probably had health issues since I was like 19, but it just started getting worse. And let's just say it cracked maybe 5 years ago, and where I really was just almost non-functional. And I started researching all the health stuff, and I noticed that there was so many things that were like contradictory, like out there versus what the mainstream was doing. And then I started hearing about, how they suppress information. I heard about those, I think they call them those doctors that they killed for the vaccine situation that, I started hearing a lot about that.
Yeah.
I started hearing about a lot of things. So I got into veganism. And somehow from there, I think maybe it's related now. And now looking back, and I started getting into atheism. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't really religious. I never followed anything. I was always kind of like iffy on it. I felt like, at least from my parents' perspective, it was all these kind of rules. There's so many rules of this. You can do this, you can do that. And, you're going to really you're going to go to the worst place on earth if you don't follow the rules. Right. And I always felt off being forced to do something. I was always like, this isn't right. So I could never embrace it. And it wasn't until I started getting into atheism, I spent maybe 2 years I would call it deprogramming from society, because I think what atheism did for me, and I would watch shows 24/7. There's this one called Atheist Experience, Dawkins, there's Hitchens, Sam Harris. I think they call them the Four Horsemen. There was like 4 guys that would always, debate everybody. They would just destroy the Christians in debates. For the most part, at least from back then when I would watch it, I'd be like, these guys are making more sense, the atheists. Yeah. And it wasn't until I was able to one day wake up and I went over to my wife, and I didn't know how she was going to react. I'm like, I think I'm atheist. And it wasn't until then that I felt free from, I would say, the shackles of just society in general, because I think it's all one big mind control program that once you're able to free yourself, even if it's just from the religious aspect, now you're like looking at everything, like anything that tries to conform you to something, you're already questioning it. You're like, okay, now I could do it for something else that's even less controversial, right? So I think that woke me up huge. And also a friend of mine, it was a coworker, this guy named Jay. He was just a contractor that we hired. He started getting me into those same guys that on YouTube. I think he mentioned Dave Chappelle. He had some podcasts, and there's a bunch of podcasters that he was looking at. And they would also look at the music industry, as was mentioned right now. And they would look at, all the satanic stuff. So obviously, from my point of view, I wasn't really looking at it from the Bible perspective, but I could see where they were trying to mind control using certain symbology and things of that nature. And that's when I started going, I would say, deeper down the rabbit hole. And I did sort of a full circle back into the God believing. So it was pretty interesting, but I had to go through that veganism, atheism, 2 years to really deprogram myself and understand how to deprogram myself from anything else. Because it's pretty much the same process, I think, regardless of the topic. It's, it's just trying to see where people are actually trying to program you into something. So that was, I would say, the biggest eye-opening situation. Oh, and I was doing water fasting. I did 2 5-day water fasts back then because I was really, ill, and I was trying everything. And on one of those, I somehow got into something called the Law of One, which me and Joe have discussed a bunch of times, which is a channeled, I guess, information coming from supposedly, an ET source in the 1980s. And that made so much sense to me because they talk about basically everything is one, and they talk very scientifically. They talk about all kinds of stuff in that. It's a very thorough, difficult to read because it's basically an interview with an ET source over a 3-year period. I think they would meet once a week or something like that. So there's like 100 sessions or something.
And they didn't use Skype.
Huh?
They didn't use Skype conference. They should have.
Wasn't that easy?
They recorded it on I think like a tape recorder, and then they finally somebody transcribed the whole thing into like text, and you can still hear the audio. So there's a website, but there's a guy, Scott Mandelker, on YouTube. I call it YouTube University because definitely that's where I learned mostly everything. He kind of went over the whole thing, and he would go into interpretation, and that's where I knew, like, because they have something called a concept called wander. So a wander is basically a star seed. Now we call them star seeds now. A wanderer is basically, somebody that came to Earth for specific mission, lessons, etc. And they're generally not from here. They're from another race. And I felt so like I finally found my call, like where I'm from, kind of like I found my source of information of truth, and that's been my base ever since. That's been one of the few things that I haven't kind of backtracked on. I see actually more correlation to that with Dr. Wilson and all the new stuff I'm reading. So that's been my base. I would say that was it. Like I started telling everybody that, and then they started just shutting me out. And when you go full on, like, no, like I'm not from here, telling people that, they just start, they start acting weird and stuff. So that was basically
they start glitching.
Yeah. They're like, what? Like, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, so that was pretty much my main turning point, I would say.
Okay. So for you, it's kind of like a health thing, and then like once you went down that rabbit hole, isn't it funny? It's like you go down the rabbit hole, right? And then one hole leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And then you just kind of get to this concept where, like, well, if you want to figure one thing out, you kind of have to figure the whole thing out. You know what I mean? It almost happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. But everything is connected in one way or another.
Yeah. So I mean, like, it keeps you going. It gives you a lot of content to review, I guess.
Yeah.
Let me think. So for me, let's see. I have to look at it. I forgot the question. Okay. So what woke me up? So I guess you could kind of say, for the most part, I mean, even just growing up, I was into the concept of conspiracy theories. I like that. You know what I mean? And I was like kind of casual about it. You know what I mean? So it's like, of course, like the big ones, like 9/11 and like the moon landing and things like that, where I was just, and like like chemtrails and just like all these other frequency, like cell phones are gonna kill you, give you cancer, all that kind of stuff. So like I kind of like entertained a lot of that stuff or whatever, right? And then I want to say it was a combination of two. I'm like relatively new on the scene, but pretty. I feel like I'm pretty hard and quick when it comes to like the switch getting turned on and me just like going down all these avenues of truth seeking or whatever. But like for me, I remember very explicitly it had to do with Donald Trump, actually, right? So it was like, I want to say it was like 2016, probably February, and I'm out in California with my friends, and we're at Mount Tahoe. We're doing like snowboarding and skiing and stuff. We're just in this log cabin, and some of the people I was with, they were like in the Silicon Valley scene or whatever, so they were like pretty liberal or whatever, and they were really into politics. And up to that point, I like did not pay attention to politics at all. You know what I mean? Like, other than maybe in 2012, I think I was on Reddit a whole lot, and they were talking about Ron Paul. I like the idea that libertarianism kind of just kind of like leave people alone, let them do their own thing. Like I kind of just I was like, so when people ask me, I'd always be like, well, I kind of like Ron Paul or whatever. Right? Most people won't bug you too much if you say that answer because most people it's not like mainstream enough for people like have a real well-formed opinion. So I was like,
he's not going to win, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Like, I can dodge the question, the confrontation, but still kind of sound like I know what I'm talking about or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? So I would say Ron Paul. So anyway, I'm watching this thing, and it's a Republican national president, probably one of the first ones or whatever. I think Trump is at the center podium. And, like, they're just asking, like, the very generic political questions or whatever. And, like, he would just answer. He would just kind of shoot from the hip, you know? And he would just say whatever. And, like, the funny thing was, it was just everybody was freaking out. Like, everybody was blowing up, you know what I mean? I think at that point, everybody just thought he was a joke and it was funny, you know what I mean? Me, having the sense of humor that I have, I also found it hilarious, you know what I mean? Because it's like Mr. Jeb Bush, you know, he's like the Bush dynasty kind of guy or whatever. I think there was Paul Ryan in there, so one of the Ryans or whatever. Ron Paul, one of the Pauls was in there. So, you know, there's like some political dynasties and all these big players all across everything, serious this and serious that. And he would just come in and shoot all these questions straight from the hip. And, like, I was laughing the whole time. And I think at the same time, I was looking at some of my friends and they were all kind of, like, disgusted a little bit, too. Because I remember they were, like, very, like, liberal or whatever, right? But I still even think at that time they didn't really take it seriously. So they also kind of thought it was fun or whatever, right? So, like, something about just watching him break everybody's like computational responses was like really eye-opening to me, right? And it kind of got me interested or whatever. And then what happened is I think he started to get popular, so they started to demonize him. You know what I mean? So he's in the media. It was just like he's this or whatever. And I just got to the point where I was like, I just don't believe this. I was like, there's no way this guy would be doing this well and being this negative or whatever. So I started going to like source data. So I was like, in the little 2-minute clip that they like spliced up, I'd watch the 30-minute clip. You know what I mean? I get the whole context or whatever, right? And then like they started talking about like fake news, and I was like, you know what? Like it is fake. Like it is. It's like if you actually watch it, you know what I mean? And if you actually look at the way they sliced it up, it's like they're saying two different things or whatever, right? So like it just like totally blew my mind that people were so like convinced by the 2-minute segment that it was real. And of course everybody thinks it's real because it's like CNN and MSNBC and all like these authoritarian
television.
Yeah, the TV says it must. If the TV says it must be true. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that or whatever. Right? So it's blowing my mind. Also, at the same time, you know, meme culture is like just a big deal. So I'm on this subreddit called the Donald or whatever, which I'm sure some of you have heard of, and they're just making all these memes. Well, the thing is, like, nobody could counter meme them. You know why? And the reason why is because for something to be funny like that, it kind of has to be true. You know what I mean? So if you're memeing lies or whatever, it just doesn't resonate with the masses as well. So I'm watching this Donald Trump guy run. I'm watching the meme culture just explode. I'm watching the hilarity ensue or whatever, right? At the same time, I'm watching all the manipulative media that's going on that's saying he said this and he said this. And I'm like, no, if you just like look at the news. So I'm like, they're lying about this, which is like extremely accessible information. You know what I mean? Because of like YouTube and all the other platforms where they broadcast it all and they, you know, record every text or every word that was said. Like you can even read the transcript or whatever. I'm like, what else are they lying about or whatever? So really just opened up my mind to like the concept that people might be lying to you. And like, it sounds really obvious or whatever, you know, but like, if you actually kind of take it to heart and do a little bit of digging, I think it's different. You know what I mean? It makes you feel differently about things. So I'm kind of doing the digging on that side or whatever. But then at like the exact same time, this is so funny, is like the flat earth stuff starts coming out. Right? Like that's a huge one where everybody gets super angry about it, right? Like if you say flat earth, like you talk about, again, we're talking about the program, people just get angry, as angry as you can possibly be. You're stupid.
They started hurling death threats.
Yeah, just all that kind of stuff. Now me, you know, like I said, I enjoyed the concept of conspiracy enough to entertain everything or whatever. I'm just learning that basically if you watch the television programming, the box that tells you what to think, that they're literally lying to you. I was like, you know what? That's an interesting concept. Like, what a lie. What a great lie that would be if they can't even tell you the shape of the object you're living in. But we've been in the space, we've been to the moon, we've been all this other kind of stuff or whatever, right? So I was like, that's like, you want to start talking about questioning everything? That's a really good starting point.
Yeah.
What's the shape of the object we're on? Because everybody knows it's round or whatever, right? So then that's when you go, you know, you jump on the YouTube and they have 2-hour videos, 200 proofs of why the earth is flat or whatever. But luckily for me, I was always kind of like, again, like I was on both sides. So like I wasn't necessarily 100% this way, 100% this way or whatever, right? So I was like read the round argument, read the earth argument, read the round argument, read the earth, you know what I mean? I just kind of all this stuff. And then I remember one that was really funny. It was like talking about these mega trees, you know what I mean? Like I forget what the name of it was called or whatever, but there's no mega trees on flat earth or something like that. They're talking about these like huge ancient trees that don't exist anymore. You know, just this kind of stuff or whatever, right? And so like it's just like all this stuff's like going into my mind, and it's just like opening me up and making me just like question things or whatever, right? And because the internet exists and you can literally just go on and on forever and ever, you can really do it. So I'm just like Googling and like YouTubing, and the next thing you know, I'm literally like all day at work, I got my headphones on, like I can't be bothered by anybody else. So like I'm trying to listen to like hours and hours of content. I'm at home, I'm listening to all this stuff, you know, it's hours and hours of content or whatever. And then like, you know, next thing you know, I guess like one more significant event too is like, I know Luke will kind of talk about this on Deep Healing Spaces, like when you're kind of looking up truthful information, it kind of resonates with you a little bit or whatever, right? So I remember when our friend Rachel, she sent me the first Dr. Wilson article or whatever. And I was going to actually meet her the next day for a consultation. I had no idea what it was or anything. I was having sleep problems. She was going to help me. She said Di could help me or whatever, right? And so I just remember I'm sitting there on that website and I look at the first thing. You know, it's kind of a weird website when you come across it the first time or whatever. But, you know, like the next thing you know, I look up, it's like 3 hours later. And I'm just on my phone, like just clicking on all the related links and going through everything. And there was something that I couldn't even explain, but I knew like I needed to do this. You know what I mean? It was like a calling of sorts or whatever. And I was like vibrating funny or something like that.
Yeah, I can relate. Yeah. I was like, man, I was like, who is this guy? This dude is weird.
Yeah. But then I kind of started doing it a little bit, and I could, you know, obviously now it's been like a little over 2 years, and I can start seeing how all those I can still remember those initial feelings I had because it wasn't even that long ago, how like I started to believe like, yeah, there is something inside of you that allows you to like discern fact from fiction and truth. And like if you go down these holes, like you're gonna start, it's gonna be a winding road, but like you're gonna start like leaning and veering towards certain things. And like it was, I don't know, it's kind of exciting or whatever, right? So yeah, so oddly enough, I guess I could kind of rewind it all and just be like again, I was kind of into it my whole life, conspiracy theories in general, more of a casual of sorts. But then when I watched programming break down because of Donald Trump, and when I thought of the concept of like we should even question if the earth is flat or round, and like that's a decent question actually, because like what can you believe nowadays? I was like my mind just exploded, right? And like all of a sudden I just had to go or whatever, right? So it's been a wild couple years or whatever, right? But Fast and Furious too, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's been fun.
I can only think of like I was thinking about this the other day, like the people who knew this in like the 80s, you know what I mean, or like the 70s, the people who have known this for like 50, 60 years or whatever. I was like, I feel bad for them. Well, in a way, I feel bad for them because it's like they didn't have any communities to connect to or any people to talk about this stuff. There wasn't mainstream.
Yeah, they would actually meet. They'd have little conferences, but it's like 25 of them.
Yeah. I mean, that was it. You know what I mean? And I mean, at that level, at that stage, you got to feel, I mean, it's a totally different mindset. I'm kind of thankful that I live where I am kind of right now, because I don't know if I'd be strong-willed enough to like persevere when it's 25 people meeting once a year with like the handful of textbooks that we've got out of the library, and that's kind of all we're going off. You know?
How about 500 years prior, where they burned you at the stake for whatever, you know?
Yeah, you're not even allowed to have controversial opinions, right? Like that's a whole other thing. Right?
I mean, those were the conspiracy theories back then, right? I mean, that's
yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of that. So we'll keep going here. I got another question for you. So we'll roll it over to Daniel. So Daniel, the real question here is, what makes you seek? What continues you on this journey of finding truth? You know, what drives you?
Well, at this point in time, what drives me is being efficient and zoning in on one specific goal, or, you know, just going in one direction and focusing on one goal or two, you know, maybe a handful of goals, 1 to 2 or 3 goals at a time. And in the information age that we're in, I've seen that me just researching and stuff like that since maybe about 2008. I mean, so it's been over 10 years that I've really been putting a lot of time into reading and researching and watching videos and all these different topics. And a lot of stuff that I was looking at back then in 2008, 2009, people are just now starting to even hear about. And when I hear people like, oh, well, you know about the chemtrails, and I knew about that in 2008, and they were in the sky and nobody was looking at them, and they're still not looking at them. So my thing now is I only focus on what it is that I can change. So, and I try to block out all the other things that I feel are distractions. So there's a million different things that you can look at on the internet, from the Mandela effect to they got this thing called the mud flood and all these changes in history and stuff like that. And some of those things are okay to look at. I keep it in the back of my mind after I look at it for, a few minutes. But then I focus back on what it is that I'm here to do. So my biggest thing is to be a healer. I'm a practitioner, but I also try to study other healing modalities, energy healing, counseling with numerology and astrology, things of that nature, and just being a good example and an inspiration to people, and just helping them to grow as a person, as a soul. So in order for me to do that, I have to stay focused, and what I try to do is maximize my expertise in one or two things. And if I want to be the best nutritional balancing practitioner that I can, I have to put my time into studying that. If I want to be the best teacher of because I do construction as my my 9-to-5 job. So I want to eventually build a school teaching children how to do electrical work and construction and stuff like that. Then that's what I'm going to put my focus into. So I'm more now at this point in time, I'm narrowing my my energy. I'm trying to focus my energy in one direction, or maybe two directions if I have to, but not in 100 different directions, because at this point there's so much information coming from a million different sources that it almost seems like it's there just to distract you from becoming an expert at one thing or becoming an expert at two things. So I'm continuing to seek, but I'm narrowing my search engine. I'm narrowing my searches down to one or two things and perfecting that before I move on to the next.
That's a good thing, because I'm guilty of that, man. Like, I'll kind of go like on a tangent, you know what I mean? I'll get really excited about something new, and I'll just wait. But then next thing I've kind of wasted my whole week on that thing, and then I'll be like, it's not really prudent to what I'm doing right now or whatever, right? So it's calm. I think you're probably reaching that more of a mastery point than me, but you've been doing it a lot longer, where you kind of you've had all those conversations with people. You've learned that some people will hear, some people won't hear. You know what I mean? You're kind of just out letting them do their thing. You're just focused on kind of what you need to do to get done, to better yourself and fulfill your mission and all that kind of stuff. So I think all true seekers probably need to seek that level of mastery. so anyway, all right, Carlos, what makes you seek? What makes you go?
Yeah, I have to agree a lot with what's been said. And I think we've had discussions on this, on being distracted by especially the politics, and I would say it's part of the matrix as well to get you overloaded in information. So it's a trap as well. Too many conspiracies is a trap, and how deep you go, it's also a trap. So what was the question again?
It's what makes you seek, man. Like, what drives you? You've been doing it for a while or whatever.
Yeah, so I would say, I think I mentioned this before, at least privately to you, Joe, is that I feel like I'm Neo in the Matrix, and we're here to learn specific things. First of all, I tell my son this. I go, we're inside of a virtual reality and a game, and we're trying to figure out who we are, what our purpose is, what our mission is, and we can't recall anything that we pre-programmed before we incarnated. So we have to figure all that out and refine it, and then try to execute it without being distracted too much from all the tangents that are going to be laid in front of our path. So I would say that it's that same process of refining the information that we're looking at, refining, and improving on some of those skills. Another thing I think realization I came to recently was also is trying to live a life with the least amount of heartache, I'd say. So not doing too many things that you'll regret later. And that includes spending too much time, doing this or that, researching this or that. So being very careful on the amount of time that you spend on things. And that includes family, because sometimes I can get overwhelmed. I have 2 kids, and I'll get overwhelmed in the amount of information that I'm diving into, and I might miss moments with my kids. So how much time are you spending? Just even on your mission. So I would say that it's just trying to find a balance of creating a reality that you want, finding out what that is first, and then trying to create it, and not getting so involved in it that you don't know what's going on in the rest of your environment.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me chime in real quick, as he mentioned politics, and for the past 2 years, they've been talking about this collusion with Russia thing, and I've just been laughing every I try to tell people, I've never even heard people use the word collusion. In the past 2 years, I've heard that word 300,000 times. And after the first month, I'm like, why are they still talking about this subject? They will go on the news and they'll spend a whole segment saying the exact same thing over and over and over and over. I'm like, man, I don't care about all that. What does that have to do with anything? 2 years they spend on one topic. That is a distraction.
Now,
because there's nothing that any of us can do about if there was collusion or not. No matter what, we can't do anything. But what we can do is we can work and we can fix our lives in what we have influence over. So politics, that what he's talking about, is one of the biggest distractions that we can go down.
I was literally just talking because remember, I'm new on the scene, so it's 2016. I kind of just started. So it's been about 2 years, a little more or whatever. And I just was talking to Carlos the other day. I was just like, dude, I did it. I dove in, feet first, swam around the waters a whole lot, and now I'm sitting here. I'm like, dude, I'm tired. It's exhausting. You know what I mean? People are just the same ideas are just drilled in their head or whatever over and over and over again. And I kind of listen to people have been listening to Rush Limbaugh for 40 years or something like that. How long he's been on the air, and it's the same stuff over and over again, And people just get kind of stuck in that loop, I guess you could say, that cycle, repetitive loop cycle or whatever. And so I'm getting to this point where I was well, how do we really solve our problems? How do we really move on, as humanity? And a lot of it's coming from a higher perspective. You know what I mean? It's getting out of that kind of mush and then coming up at it from this perspective. And when you come at it from a higher perspective, ideally, that's how you solve your problems or you move on or whatever, right? But yeah, it is this. It's just this trap, this social trap. It's really fun. It's really there's a lot of things.
Think about everything in this matrix is like that. You turn on the radios, you hear the same 8 to 10 songs over and over and over and over. Every single song sounds exactly the same. You turn on the news, they're talking about the exact same thing for 3 years. Yeah. It's 2019, so it's been almost 3 years. Yeah. They talk about the same subject.
Yeah, and I think what's happening, and this is my personal theory, I think as we kind of are in this ascension period of sorts or whatever, and kind of the vibrations of the earth and the universe where we reside currently is increasing, I think the principalities of darkness, they're starting to lose their grip. You know what I mean? So you're starting to see their mistakes more out in the open. So when I see the collusion thing that's been going on for 2-3 years or whatever, and it just totally falls flat on their face. Well, it's kind of work. It's every weapon they have is being formed against them and is working against them, because as more and more people wake up and rise up, their techniques and their little control tactics begin to kind of fade away. You know what I mean? So I'm probably still in a large way kind of on that front line a little bit or whatever. But a part of it kind of goes back to what you guys were talking about as well. Daniel, you're doing it because you're up for your mission. Carlos, you're doing it for your mission or whatever, right? I feel the same way, and I feel I'm a little involved in that kind of part of the matrix right now, because it's so easy for the people that I talk to on a daily basis, because that's what they're into. I'm listen, this is there's holes in this. Can you not see it? Can you not see the madness? You know, does this help wake you up? So I feel like as these more public epic events fail, you know what I mean? That's going to be like my realm, at least at this moment in time, to help get those people who are kind of trapped. You know, like there's a lot of people that kind of understand, like, yes, it's stupid, but like they're still haven't taken it to the next level. You know what I mean? So I think even though I'm kind of floating in that area, and I think it has value, even though I think kind of like where Daniel is, where he's more focused, I think that has more ultimate value or whatever, right? But, you know, everybody has a different role in this kind of game or whatever, right? So, like, I'm kind of in this role right now. I kind of think it's funny, but at the same time, I'm also waking up to, even though it's only been like me involved in it for 2-3 years, I'm starting to see the repetitive, cyclonic nature of it all. And it's like already making me bored and tired and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the thing is to not allow it. I mean, it's fine to understand it and research it, but it's not to allow it to transform you and change you and get deep into your heart. I mean, people take things that have nothing to do with them, so they take it to heart, and then they neglect the things that are right in front of them in their own households that have to do with them. Right. And that's what the Matrix is designed to do: get us away from what we are actually supposed to be doing and focus on stuff that has nothing to do with us, really.
That's one thing I would add as well, is that it's almost like the Matrix wants you to be in this dualistic world. And the more you dive into one, you know, side or the other side, so you're always going to pick a side. It's, if you start going into those paths, you're going to be like on your side is always the good side. You know, it doesn't matter what side you're on. You could be you could be conservative, and you're the right, you know, you're on the right side, and same will happen on the other side. So if you get out of that dualistic nature of everything, really, it could be on any topic, then you're kind of above it, and it can't pull you down energetically, in my opinion. So as long as you understand that, it's okay to kind of, just delve into the topic lightly, but it always tends to, it's very difficult. And that's why I say, when you're Neo, when you could like go far into something and then just forget about it the next second, like where it's not even like it really doesn't matter, like, to you, where you just like forget about it, you know.
And like I think of that too sometimes. It's like, I kind of feel like I'm kind of in this role right now where I'm in the more topical stuff or whatever, but really if I could like teleport from here to here on live TV and everybody saw it, like that would do way more work, like that would do way more good, you know what I mean, than me spending these hours listening to this political commentary and things like that, you know what I mean? So anyway, so I guess for myself, what was the question? Why do you seek? So it's kind of like what you guys are at too. There's like a mission at hand here to kind of find truth. And I think a lot of, like, and I was using the word programming, I think where I'm kind of passionate, at least at the moment, is to help people break their programming. You know what I mean? Probably because I'm a computer programmer. You know what I mean? I had a nature and a draw to it, like, naturally.
Oh, like Neo.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I got a little follow the white rabbit floppy disk, and now I'm going crazy, right? So anyway, I'm kind of like, I want to help people break that condition. You know what I mean? Like, I feel passionately about that. I think I ultimately also realized, like, you can only do so much, and that's when you start to internalize a lot more and you kind of go within a lot more. I think that's ultimately where true freedom comes from. And I'm still, like, obviously experiencing and learning all this stuff as we go along, but as like external things happen to me as well, I think it's drawing me more and more within. You know what I mean? It's kind of like this compression expansion kind of thing or whatever. I'm starting to realize, like, all the truth is in here. There's nothing outside of you. And the deeper you go in, that's where you're going to find all your answers and all your peace. And then when you're kind of vibrating at that level, people, you know, everything cometh to you. You know what I mean? So I think, so what kind of makes me seek as well in regards to just kind of helping like the normal people deprogram a little bit is just like, and this is why I kind of like Dr. Wilson's stuff as well. It's like unlocking the human potential. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's a lot of mysteries out there, right? And a lot of it has to do with just like the very fundamental stuff. Like, what are we? What are we made of? What's a soul? What's this? You know what I mean? How is everything compiled? Is everything a frequency? Is everything molecules vibrating? Whatever. You know what I mean? Where if you can get to the root of that, you know, but at the same time, it's interesting because when you go down the thought of like the mystery teachings and stuff, there's a point of surrender that you kind of have to come to where it's like, you don't actually know. You know what I mean? So it's kind of confusing. It's kind of like you want to go down, 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 and down. Then at some point in time, like, you got to just really like surrender and hand it over to God or whatever, right? And then that's where like true knowing will kind of occur. So I'm kind of like at this point now where it's kind of funny. It's like you know something, you realize something, but it's like I know Carlos used this term one time. It's like you're Neo in the Matrix, and you know you can stop the bullets, but now you're trying to figure out how to actually stop the bullets. You know what I mean? So I feel like in my seeking world right now, I'm at that point where I'm like just trying to learn how to stop these bullets or whatever, right? And I'm just kind of like learning the lessons on the fly as they come, as they go, and I'm waiting. Hopefully, like some breakthrough or something will happen that'll kind of like be that aha moment or whatever, right? Or it might be a longer process where like I just kind of chip a little bit away, chip a little bit away, chip a little bit away. But I want to get down to that bottom, where like the statues, at the bottom of the chipping is there, and I can be like, oh, well, okay, I figured it out, cool. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what keeps me going. Let's see. I got one more question for everybody, and then we can kind of wrap this up. It is, drum roll, please. Okay, and we'll start with Daniel. Daniel, how do normal people, how do you relate to normal people? You know what I mean? People kind of know you a little bit more. I know you talked about how you were kind of an isolationist at some point in time in your life. You're probably still kind of that way. Like, give me your day-to-day normal people who know your confrontations you have, whatever, right? As a truth seeker, you're kind of I'm looking at, I think, most of the time.
Man, I relate to people very, very well. Now, as an adult, because I've learned that you have to speak to people on their level. And I can speak to anybody on their level. I can speak to people who, just your average everyday people, go to work every day and come home and pay bills and then go back to work. I can talk to them about sports and, cutting grass and, anything, the weather, whatever the case may be. And, my mission to me is to just to be friendly to people. Some people, I've come to the conclusion, everybody doesn't have to know the things that I know. The things that I know are specific for me to know. The same way, you may have somebody that's that works in a water treatment facility, and he knows how to treat the water for the city. I don't know anything about that. I may have an idea about it, but I don't really know anything about it. I'm never going to be an expert on it because it's just not what I do. So if he was to speak to me about water treatment, then he'd have to speak to me on my level. And if he looked down on me, then that would kind of make me feel bad. Well, it wouldn't make me feel bad, but a regular person might make me feel bad. But I speak to people and I look at them on their level. And my only mission for people is to be friendly to them and to try to inspire them, to be the best that they can be. And I never bring up anything conspiratorial or anything like that. If somebody has a health issue, then I'll mention nutritional balance and maybe, but that's just how I deal with people. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten a whole lot better responses from people than I did growing up. So that's a good thing. Now, as far as enemies, now I do have enemies. Extreme enemies. That's the flip side. With me, it's people either love me or hate me. So you have people who, are your, Dr. Wilson calls them the rogues, or people who have spirits in them that hate you or whatever the case may be. I have to battle them at different times in my life. And it's like Neo in the Matrix. Once you're awakened out of the Matrix, Agent Smith can take over any person that he wants to take over. He knows where you're at, and if you're next to a neighbor or your cousin or whatever, if they've opened up, they have a doorway open in their soul because of whatever behaviors that they do or whatever the case may be, then Agent Smith he can jump in that person and attack you. So that does happen from time to time, and I do have enemies that I have to figure out ways to wage war against because. It's at times it's been life and death situations, literally. So that's the negative side.
That's my practitioner, by the way. That's
yeah.
Deliver me nutritional balancing services.
Seriously. and they'll come after your family and everything, like they've came after my children and stuff like that. But for the most part, is more people that really like me and enjoy my company, because I'm not judgmental to people. I don't try to get them into the stuff that I'm into. I just try to be friendly to them and try to figure out a way to relate to them. If they like sports, or if they like building things, whatever the case may be, I can relate to a lot of different people in a lot of different ways, which is the good thing about being a truth seeker, is you eventually end up knowing a little bit about everything. So you can talk to a person about this, you can talk to a person about that, and nothing is really too foreign for you to speak about, even just a little bit, to where you can relate to somebody on an emotional level. So that's that's how people relate to me, and that's how I try to relate to people.
Okay, that's good. So when you first were kind of going down this path, I mean, did you really turn, like, did you kind of get excommunicated from society as a whole, friend?
Yeah. I used to try to get people into what I was into, and it's like, man, they wasn't into all that. People just wanted to, like in college and stuff, man, people just wanted to party and live their lives and, do all of this stuff that I wasn't interested in, and because I was interested in the stuff that I was interested in, all the things that I was learning, and I try to get people into it, and they start hating me. So I figured out that that's not the way to go. The way to go for me is just to blend in with people. And, it's like, when you're a mutant in X-Men or something like that, you try to blend in as much as you can, and until your powers are needed, then you can unleash your wrath and start destroying me.
Is that the point where you kind of feel like, because you got so many haters, it's kind of a good thing? It means you're onto something.
Yeah. You want to have as many friends as you can, which I definitely have way more people that are on my side as opposed to hate me. So that's a good thing. But you're going to have some, and you always have to have discernment of those people, because they will try to kill you or destroy you. And maybe not kill you physically, because they, people don't want to go to jail and stuff like that, but they'll try to destroy the things that you try to build. So you have to always be very strategic and look, 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. And that's the good thing about this program, is it helps you be a little bit more mentally strong, and you're able to see things and discern things. Call it ascension or whatever the case may be, but you just have a sixth sense and more of a perception of the motivations of people. So that helps in navigating the world.
Right. Okay. Carlos, how are you and normal people getting along these days?
So in some of the YouTube channels that I follow now, they call the normal people, like these are like the ascension channels. They'll call the normal people the moguls.
Moguls?
Yeah, the moguls.
Okay.
Harry Potter.
So it's Harry Potter reference. I know you've been talking about that recently. So, but for me, I'm kind of like with Daniel, where I started with trying to change everybody. Honestly, I thought that was my mission. I'm like, can't you see, like, they're trying to kill us? And
look in the sky.
Yeah.
It's right there.
He's like, it just looks like a cloud.
Perfectly.
Cloud. What about that plane right there? It's like, no, it's a regular plane. Okay. So yeah, I would try my hardest to, point out stuff to my close friends, family, everything. And it was exhausting being always ridiculed or looked at funny. And honestly, you start doubting yourself as well, because you're getting that feedback. Yeah, like in your face feedback, instead of, just like comments on YouTube. Like, you could probably find people that you like on YouTube or Telegram or whatever, but in person, when you get that, it kind of hurts a little more, right? But yeah, that gives you thick skin over time, and also you learn your lesson. Like everything, I learned my lesson, and I've actually gone the opposite route, where I'm kind of antisocial for the most part. And I think it also has to do with the program. Maybe, you go through these phases of where you're just tired, you don't want to be dealing with people for the most part. I'm just tired. I'm on my I think almost my second year on the program. So I'm still a baby, I guess you could say. And I'm still tired, and I don't want to deal with, people for the most part. And I follow a few sources now of information where they, I think we've gone over some of these regressions where they say that, you could be a source of light without having to really tell anybody anything, right? So I do still send people to, articles of Dr. Wilson or videos, and I don't really care. Before I used to be like, what do they think? Did they watch it? Did they, what is their opinion? Now I'm like, I just hope that even if they didn't even open it, that the information somehow got to them, like that information, that energy got to them, so they would be more enlightened, at least slightly. So I feel that way, that you just by being, in a location or trying to hold your space, energetic space, you're actually affecting other people. And that's how you judge people less as well. So when you feel like you can help them without them acknowledging that you're helping them, then there's less possibility of you having to judge them for not listening to you and, doing the opposite, I guess, of what you were recommending. So, yeah, because that happens a lot. People just do the absolute opposite of what you asked them, what you told them. And you spent like a whole year researching it, and you're like, I know what I'm talking about. And they do the opposite. So,
purposely, because they wouldn't have done it if you hadn't said anything.
Yeah.
Like a kid, to do the opposite.
Yeah, so like now I just try to hold myself in. Actually, I would say I'm conserving energy. I don't spend a lot of time convincing people of anything. I do throw things out there a little bit at work, and I do interact nicely with my people at work, and those are but now my friends, I kind of kicked everybody off of Instagram that if they have a message or they're too fake, I'll just kick them off, even if they're my friends from like, high school or whatever. I'm very picky of the information that's going to be presented to me in like my social media. I quit Facebook, so I don't care about that. And that's it. I just have Instagram on my social media sites, so that's like my only interaction with like 3 people that really care about the same things I care about. So yeah, I just limit my stuff. And I conserve energy right now. Maybe in the future I'll switch back to trying to, spread that energy out and trying to change people again. But right now I'm just in conservation mode.
So your only friends are your wife, your kids, and then us crazy people.
And the NB, yeah, the NB. Thankfully, you guys saved me, so I wouldn't be 100% antisocial. Actually, it's just because of you. Because remember, there's a quick story on the flat Earth thing. The reason that me and Joe got connected was because I mentioned the flat Earth video, and this is before I was like I am now, like I'm describing now. This is just like a year and a half ago, and I posted something on Luke's thread about flat Earth, and they just started like ridiculing it or whatever, like that's worthless, it's crap, I ain't even gonna watch it stuff. And I'm like, dude, these guys don't have an open mind. And I just got pissed off because I was already in that period of I only want to deal with people that are on the same level. And then it was Joe that kind of brought me back to. He sent me a private message. He's like, I think it's good to look at everything, and that's kind of what my point was. Let's just look at everything. I was thinking I had a bunch of truth seekers, and that's kind of what I want. That's actually the only people I want to deal with for the most part is truth seekers right now. I'm just low energy for anything else. So.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
It was
flat Earth will break up families.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'll destroy civilization.
Carlos would always post stuff, and it was just like well-rounded, good thoughts, and I enjoyed what he had to say. So when he left the group, I was like, oh man, I liked what he had to say. I was like, I'll just chase him down or whatever, right? And then luckily, one thing led to another, and now everybody's kind of back in cahoots.
Yeah. And I'm not so strict on. I've also lowered my, I guess, expectation of how people are going to react to whatever I say. So once you're already in that mode and not judge, then it's easy to just let things go. So I'm better in a better place, I guess you could say. That I wasn't even on the program. I think I had just done the diet back then. So the diet, the program has really helped me in that sense.
Yeah, you kind of become more calm, more grounded, more centered. It makes it easier to just stay in your own power and not worry about other people.
Yeah.
It helps when it's like a lot of things, like, when you're truth seeking, it can really easily, and even like being highly spiritual, it can really become an ungrounding exercise in a lot of ways. like doing something like the pushing down exercise or just even a diet or whatever keeps you grounded and it makes it easier, at least in my opinion, to kind of, keep your sanity. You know what I mean? Not go crazy, not get too lost out there. So let's see. For me, it's kind of interesting because like I was never really big on like social media or anything like that anyway. You know what I mean? Because I was pretty lucky growing up. I had like a really good group of friends. There's about 8 of us, and I've known them since middle school. Most of them I've known since high school, and a lot of them I went to college with or whatever, right? So I got like these like same like 8 friends. Of course, I like their wives and their girlfriends, and like we have like a really strong nucleus. So I spend a lot of my time kind of interacting with them for the most part, right? So they know me pretty well or whatever. And I kind of got to this point where I started like doing this whole truth-seeking thing or whatever. And like I was lucky because they entertained it, you know what I mean? At least some of them thought I was interesting, even though probably a lot of them think I'm like wrong about a lot of things or they think I'm crazy about a lot of things. But they kind of like respected you enough to kind of let you do your own thing, even if they were just kind of like, well, Joe's kind of crazy, but whatever, we'll let him do his thing. So like I kind of had that like support, even if they don't really realize it, like where they just didn't totally just like kick me out of all their groups and be like, okay, Joe's too crazy, can't talk to him. So like that was pretty comforting. But then what it got for me as well is I kind of like, cause I respect these guys a lot and they're all really smart guys. And, I like to just throw stuff at them and like, there's like good dialogue that kind of comes up between us now or whatever. Right. And so at first it was like a little more rocky and choppy because everything I was throwing at them was like kind of too crazy. But now it's gotten to the point where it's like a healthy dialogue and a healthy amount of disagreement and like I like the discussion that I have with these people or whatever, right? So it's like maybe at first I was a little more excommunicated in a sense, you know what I mean? But they were still kind of kept me around enough. I guess I was, everybody's got to have that guy who's like a conspiracy theorist. Everybody's got to have like the Dale Gribble, in their King of the Hill group or whatever, right? So I was just that guy for a little bit, and now it's kind of like. Especially because again, remember I'm kind of more in the political current event arena right now. As I'm like, guys, listen, like this is the truth, and like 3 years later we learn Russian collusion's fault, but I've been saying it since day one. They're kind of like, oh, maybe there's something. This Joe guy was maybe he's right about some stuff or whatever, right? So I get a lot of odd looks and a lot of like eye rolls or whatever, you know what I mean? But luckily, because I only kind of talk to like a small amount of people anyway, it's kind of stuff I can handle. You know what I mean? Sometimes it does make me tired and it kind of makes me be like, I need to stop being so concerned about like others and what they think or whatever. But, it also helps me grow. You know what I mean? It's really good. It's a really good environment for me to kind of just, develop these kind of, I mean, it's even just like points and counterpoints, thinking and logical thinking, you know what I mean? And like, it's just helping me kind of navigate this kind of stuff. So, again, everybody thinks I'm a little weird, but like I'm kind of beginning to embrace it more. I'm beginning to embrace it a whole lot more. Where like I'm starting to care less, which I think is like there's a lot of power in like not caring what other people think as much. You know what I mean? Because as long as you're kind of just a lot of it has to do with your intent. Like I feel like my intent's pretty good. Like I wish well to everybody. I want to be friends to everybody. I like wish the highest good for everybody. Like that's kind of how I think or whatever, right? So it's like. Even if I'm saying something that's like controversial or something like that in regards to like mainstream narrative, I feel like I'm open to being wrong. Number one, which is like a big. I think there's a lot of people in this community that are like once they're convinced of something, they're like 100% convinced. To kind of a militant degree. Whereas like I'm okay with being wrong, and I actually think there's a lot of value in being wrong about things. You learn something. You know what I mean? It's kind of like failure. So when you fail at something, there's a lot of lessons and takeaways. And so like the next time you do something, you can kind of take those lessons with you, and it just kind of makes you better and sharper and things like that, right? So I guess there's that kind of aspect to it. And then what else? I think Carlos kind of touched on this as well. It's like he's kind of like narrowed his scope a lot to who he interacts with or whatever. And so like, obviously I have like a normal job and things like I kind of have to do or whatever. But whereas before, like I recently changed jobs maybe a year ago, whereas before I feel like the need to like really integrate myself and become best friends with everybody, I don't really feel that need anymore because there's something about people who are, I'm going to use the word conscious, people that are conscious or seeking truth or whatever, like I can spend a lot of time with those people and it kind of makes me happy. Whereas if I spend time with like a lot of the normal people or whatever, it feels limiting. It really just feels limiting. Like it's kind of like Daniel said, it's okay to be able to talk to everybody. Like that's cool. And like, there's a lot of value to that or whatever. But like, to me, the conversations are getting a little more boring and a little more rigmarole. And I'm just like,
Yeah, same. They talk about the same thing every single day.
Yeah, yeah. And, it's the sports this and the bad referee call that, for the for the 20th year of existence or whatever, right? And it's just like, yeah. Actually, dude, you were talking about the music or whatever. That was something before I even woke up. I was like, you listen to the radio. I'm like, why are they only playing the same like 10 songs for like over a year? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What like I know there's more music than this in the planet. What is this? So, but most people just whatever. They just go along with the whole thing. Right. So yeah, I mean, I guess, I'm just at that point where I'm just kind of like, well, I only interact with a certain amount of people. The people that I kind of choose to dialogue with, some of it I like the back and forth or whatever, and some of it is just me like becoming less and less interested in the, we'll say, muggles of the world or moguls of the world or whatever. And I don't really want to like exclude anybody, but at the same time, you kind of have to do your thing. And I think ultimately what it comes down to is it's just like, if you're kind of that light, if you're like that city on the hill, if you're that truth, like it comes to you. You don't have to feel like this mission to really go out there and like, do all the work out there. If you just work on yourself, you stay internalized or whatever, it will come to you and you'll end up doing the work you want to do. And you'll probably do it a whole lot better than, just going out there one person at a time. That can be exhausting and it can kind of burn you out or whatever, right? So I guess that's kind of where I am right now. So.
And it teaches you to be humble because, when the ego always has to, everybody has a big ego, at some point in time. I mean, just in society, we're trained to have an ego. And then when we go out and we start trying to spread what we believe is the truth and everybody just hates us for it, nobody wants to hear it. And like, our ego gets hurt. But then, you realize over time, over the years, it's like, well, people don't have to believe what I believe, even though it's what I believe is I can prove it, it's true. They don't want to believe it. They don't have to believe it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me. I can give them the information and maybe one day, the switch will turn on and they'll remember something that I said 10 years ago and I'll be long gone. I'll be in another city or something like that. It's kind of like in the script in the Bible where it says some people, they plant the seeds. Mm-hmm. Some people water the seeds, and then God is the one that gives
the apple seed over there.
Yeah. So you might be the person that just plants the seed, but you'll never see it grow. You know what I mean? And maybe you're never going to see it grow because you don't need to see it grow because you need to be humble and not think that you're just God's gift to the earth, the only gift to the earth, because there's so many other people that are have the mission to make the world a better place as well besides you. And so your mission is just to do the work and don't look towards people for your reward. Don't look towards people to have all this gratitude towards you. Just seek that from God and he'll give it to you. And that'll be the real reward, and the real praise and gratitude comes from him. Because if you're looking for praise and thanks and all this money and different things from people, then we become a slave to the people. We become a slave to the world.
Right. So. And I'll add something to that, is that a lot of the times I feel like I agree with that 100%. And that's why I feel like if you can silently feel like you're helping them, and it kind of completes the mission of feeling like you're sending the right energy, you're sending the right thought forms or whatnot, whatever term we want to use. But at the same time, like it's exhausting just to, try to explain something to somebody where it took you a whole year to really unravel that information, and how far they're going to have to go to actually get the gist of what you're saying. So it's like you just come to the conclusion that really everybody is on their own path, and it's difficult for you to make somebody skip a school year. They got to go through their own thing. So it's like I could do that, but not anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Everybody's on their own path. Everybody has to learn their own lessons. You need to respect that. People might not be ready for stuff at the time you're ready to tell them something, but it's like Daniel said, you plant that seed. You know what I mean? So like if you kind of zoom all the way back and you kind of have that point of view, honestly, life becomes a little bit easier and it becomes a lot less stressful. You feel a lot less burdened. You know what I mean? It's like you just kind of do your part, do your thing, and let the rest happen. So I'll say one more quick thing, and then we'll just kind of call it or whatever. and we'll just kind of say something. You know, anybody who's kind of new in this world or whatever. Let's just go through somebody you're listening to now, like on YouTube or something like that. And then like that can give some people to go down some rabbit holes if they choose to. Daniel, who's somebody that you would recommend somebody check out?
Quantum of Consciousness is a channel that I like, and he kind of takes the virtual reality theory, or that we're in like a simulation or whatever the case may be, but he kind of teaches more along the lines of where I'm at, is learn to avoid the distractions and to understand a little bit about everything, so you're not just in the dark about any subject or any topic, but to keep it all in perspective and to narrow down the things that in your life that you can control, the people, the circle of influence that you have, and what you can do to better that environment, as opposed to going too far into things that you cannot control and you'll never be able to control. And he gives just a lot of information on how to navigate the moguls, or the NPCs, they call them, non-player characters as well. So and I think somebody else called them backdrop people or something like that. But you know, just how to navigate that, and what we can do to build merits and something that's called soul tokens. You know, like the different things that we do in our life to build soul tokens and to build merits, having integrity, not stealing money from people, and you know, just being a good person and letting your light shine. That's what builds some type of inner thing that we really can't describe. You know, the level of your soul, or whatever you want to describe it as, that's what actually builds it. It's not the amount of knowledge that you have, not the amount of the length that you can talk about a certain subject, or the amount of information that you can give on a certain subject, but it's about how you can apply that tangibly into the real world to better other people's lives, and to better your life and better your family's life and other people's lives. So basically building merits and building soul tokens to when, you know, if you ascend, you know, you're at a higher level, or if you come back, you know, in a different reincarnation or regeneration, that you've raised up a level, as opposed to being on the same level or dropping because you didn't do anything good for anybody else. So Quantum of Consciousness is a good channel that I like. So yeah.
Okay. Quantum of Consciousness. Carlos, what you got, bud?
What I'm listening to now is pretty heavy. It's called The Kabbalion.
Huh.
So it's a book by Hermes Trismegistus. It's basically, like, I think it's the basics of Hermeticism. And basically there's 3 principles there that everything kind of follows. It's pretty cool. It's basically like the keys to the Matrix, honestly, but it's really deep, and I'm having to go back. I mean, it's free on YouTube. There's the audiobook. It's about 7 hours. And also you can just go online and find it. It's called The Kabbalion. And I would say it's like the precursor, like the Bible of New Age thinking, I would say, you know, before they distorted it.
Right.
Ever made it all feel good. This is basically like the basics, the nitty gritty formulas of everything. I recommend it highly, but it is a lot. It's involved. That's why I don't really tell anybody about it. I think I mentioned it to you, but even then, you know, like that 7-hour audio that you listened to one time that I sent you, there's definitely there's even more work, in my opinion, involved in trying to learn this. This is kind of like the Course in Miracles kind of situation, where you have to study it and go back and restudy it. So, but the Kabbalion, I'll set a link for all these on the video when I upload it.
Yeah, there was a time when Carlos would send me a video and I'd watch it and it'd be like doing banjos. I would like keep up with him, you know what I mean, 1 for 1 or whatever. But then I don't know, a couple months ago, I just got burned out, and now he's like, I don't know, it'll take me another lifetime to catch up.
It's because you're spending all your time on the freaking politics, man.
I know. What am I doing?
7-hour audio book. That's hardcore. You gotta listen to that at night when you're sleeping, and just hope it absorbs into your subconscious.
Going to like a coma for like a year, and I could probably catch up.
I said we need to get those things that Neo had in the Matrix, where you just download it like in minutes or whatever. Dude, I can't wait for that thing to happen.
Yeah.
I like Dragon Ball Z, where they have the hyperbolic time chamber, where you go in there for 24 hours, but it's a year of time in the chamber or whatever. You know, definitely one of those. So, but anyway, I guess one of the guys that I like the most, and this is definitely Carlos, is the one who introduced me to him at first. I mentioned him before on here, so I really like Greg Brayton. There's something about his approach to, I guess, metaphysics from a scientific perspective, and just kind of his background as a scientist, learning about some of these mysticisms and some of these truths or whatever, and the way he explains it and the way he breaks it down. I mean, you can go online, you can go on YouTube and just search Greg Brayton. He'll come up all over the place. He has like a 1 hour lecture. I think he has like a 3 hour lecture. I think it's really good content. It can really kind of suck you in. I think it will open up doors. You know what I mean? So, and plus, when you start looking up his stuff, you'll see a lot of the related people, and like I feel like some of the related people, like the Bruce Liptons of the world. What is it, Joe DePazian or something like that? I can't remember his name exactly. Like they're kind of related. So like, you know, it's a good little search, because it will bring you some good content. So that's my recommendation. But well, that's pretty much all I got. I had fun. Did y'all have fun?
Yeah.
Yes.
Man, how long did we go? This has been like 3-4 hours.
Right now. So we scheduled it for noon. Technical difficulties for a little bit. We're at an hour and 32.
Oh wait, yeah, it has it 1 hour 32 minutes.
Yeah.
Really, it's up to Carlos.
Oh,
He's recording the session, so
Let me stop recording. You want me to stop recording? Are we done?
yeah, you can go ahead and stop.
All right. See you later, guys.
Bye.
All right, later.